and welcome to the Pink Movement podcast with your host, Christy Collier. Each episode, you'll hear from some awesome people in and around the breast cancer world, sharing their wisdom on all things health and well-being. You'll hear simple information, practical advice, and useful tips to help you stress less, move more, and feel better.
Hi, I'm Christy Collier, and thanks for joining me for yet another episode of the Pink Movement podcast. Today we meet Yvonne Hughes, author of the fabulous book, One Piece of Advice. Yvonne shares with us her personal breast cancer story and how her love of writing and books and a desire to help others led her to writing her own book. She then shares with us lots of one pieces of advice from her book and also offers us all a discount if we want to buy a copy, which is awesome. I absolutely loved chatting with Yvonne for this podcast, and I hope you enjoy listening. She is witty and funny and very, very open. Enjoy. Yvonne Hughes is the proud author of the book One Piece of Advice, Words to Guide You Through Early Breast Cancer. Yvonne wrote this book after she herself began treatment for breast cancer. She wanted to capture the generosity of all those who had tips to pass on. Now, this totally awesome book is full of practical advice, hints and tips. So if you've just been diagnosed with early breast cancer or know somebody who has, then this book is a must. On top of the book, Yvonne has written articles about breast cancer for lots of places, news.com.au, Sunday Life, the Sydney Morning Herald Sunday Mag, and Mamma Mia, one of Australia's most popular women's websites. As well as being an author and writer and a mummy and a wife, Yvonne now undertakes speaking engagements where she offers positive, empowering advice gained from her own personal experience. Yvonne is dedicated to helping women, men and their families get through breast cancer treatment. Now, I know Yvonne personally and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast today. So welcome, Yvonne, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Pink Movement podcast.
Thank you for having me. And I've got to say, I think that was probably the best intro I've ever had. So thank you.
Fab. That's what I'm here for, to make you sound great. Now, today we're going to be talking about One Piece of Advice, Yvonne's book. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about the lady herself. So, Yvonne, if you can just share with our listeners a bit about you, your background, your family.
Okay, so I guess, for the purpose of talking about breast cancer, where it all began, I was 37 and I had a little boy who was not yet 2, and I just got married a couple of months earlier before I found my lump. So that's where I was. I was kind of in a really happy place. I was healthy. I was doing the mums and bubs exercise, and everything was really good. I didn't feel sick in any way, but then I did feel a lump, and the rest is history, really, with that.
And were you obviously from the UK, you were living in Australia at the time?
So, funny story, I'm actually Australian, but I did live in the UK a long time. So I'm an Australian, my family was in Australia, but, in a sort of very cruel twist of fate, when I did find that lump, my husband was actually back in the UK on business, and my parents were on holidays, so I was all by myself apart from my little baby when they found the lump. So that wasn't great, but my husband was on the next plane back, so hero husband came to the rescue.
Good on him. And you had a little 2-year-old at the time you were diagnosed. That must have been incredibly hard.
It was really hard. I kind of say that he was the best thing and the worst thing about it all. So it was the worst thing in the sense that I just kept having this what is a very real fear that if I don't make it, I'm leaving behind a little boy who won't remember me. So I had a lot of, I felt a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of anxiety around that. But on the flip side, he was something to fight for. Every single day of his life, he's made me smile. Even to this day, he makes me smile every day. So he was the best thing as well, because he was kind of the thing that kept me going. And I'm sure all parents say that. It sounds a bit cliched when you say it aloud, but it really was, you know, he was the best thing and the worst thing about it.
Yeah, and does he, I mean, he's probably a bit older now, does he understand what you went through?
He understands the way little kids understand stories that they've been told. You know, I think it's something that he's grown up with, and he knows that I've got a book that helps sick ladies. That's how he processes it. And I did a fundraiser a couple of weeks ago for the Cancer Council, and so he hears me talking about phrases that he's familiar with, and he knows what it's about. And there was actually an article in the local paper that he wanted to take into school. So we touched base again, and I said, do you really understand what this is about, what it's saying about Mummy, and are you comfortable fielding any questions? Because he's just turned 8, and 8-year-old boys are curious, and they might mention that people can die from breast cancer, and that could be very confronting for my son, who has grown up with a positive outcome. You know, it might have never really occurred to him that it's that serious. So I check in with him from time to time, but it is something that he's grown up with, and he's familiar with without having really thought about it.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, is he 8 now, did you say?
Yeah, just turned 8.
Yeah, I mean, that is still very young to fully understand, and I'm sure as he gets older that understanding will develop even more so.
Absolutely.
So tell me, going back to the time when you were diagnosed, tell me about that, and then how your, I suppose, journey, I know we all hate that word, progressed from there in terms of your surgeries and treatments and so on.
Okay. I actually don't mind journey. There are some phrases in this breast cancer world that really annoy me, but I actually don't mind journey because I like the progression of it. I like to know that, right, chemo done, tick, radio done, tick, and, you know, you're kind of moving away from that awful diagnosis, because, you know, you and anyone listening knows that is the worst. That beginning, that you have cancer conversation is as bad as it gets, right? It is confronting, it is terrifying, it is so raw that when you're in that, you never feel like it's going to lessen. You can't imagine not thinking about it 100 times a day. And anyone listening, I promise it does get better and it does fade. But right at the beginning, it's hyper real, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, the reality is so in your face that you can't really see anything else.
I agree completely. It's true that initial diagnosis is literally like somebody slapping you in the face, and it just becomes all-encompassing. But, you know, I have to agree with you. It does get easier, I suppose, like anything in life. The more that time goes on, that it gets a little bit easier to deal with. But that initial diagnosis is, it's mind-blowing how hard it hits you, I think.
Absolutely. And it really is difficult to imagine it being any other way.
Yeah.
You know, I remember that. I remember being right. It's like being at the eye of a storm, and you can't see past it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I had my diagnosis. Then they did all the tests to find out if it had spread, and that was, again, a very, very difficult. That sort of waiting is very hard. We just kept very busy. I think we did about 3 trips to IKEA because all of a sudden that was important. And we just kept moving, and then I actually tell this story sometimes because it's really funny. So I sat down with the surgeon and my husband, and the surgeon said, listen, it's cancer. We can't save the breast. You need a total mastectomy, but it hasn't spread. And my husband and I gave each other a high five. We go, woohoo, it hasn't spread. And I think we're probably the only ones that ever hear you need total mastectomy to then have a bit of a party. But that's how we felt. We were combating going to worst case scenario in our minds for however many days. I don't even remember how many days it was. So that's all we really cared about. And I was like, take the breast, take both, do whatever you want to do. Just save me, really.
And so did you go down the path of a single mastectomy or a double?
I had a single mastectomy. They wouldn't take the other one, but I didn't like being mono-boobed. And a year down the line, I convinced them to take the other one as well. I wasn't at that. I have subsequently had a reconstruction. I wasn't planning it on the time, but for my own comfort and for my own sense of self-esteem, I preferred to be flat and fabulous than to sort of have one real one and one fake one, and the discomfort and the imbalance that comes with all of that.
Mm. Oh, I totally understand. It's very similar to my own path of that. But, you know, everyone is different. I know some that are quite happy to have the, you know, the one-off, or, you know, it's so, you know, there's no two breast cancer, you know, I suppose paths that are the same. So, and it's all okay. No matter what we choose to do, it's all okay.
So with my book, just to my book at the moment, not every piece of advice in this book will suit everyone, and I was intentionally putting in different viewpoints so people could pick and mix and go, yes, I relate to that, and yes, I don't relate to that, because everybody is different. And when I talk about surgery or reconstruction in the book, it's more of a find out what options are available for you, rather than saying this is the way you do it, this is not the way you do it. It's important to have the conversation. So even if you don't want something, or you're pretty adamant that you don't want something, at least know what the options that you're saying no to are, because some of them might not have occurred to you. So
yeah,
you need to balance out getting information overload, but also getting information.
It's a really important point, because there are actually lots of options out there with a lot of things, not just reconstruction, when it comes to breast cancer. So it's really important, you know, that people are informed of those options before they make the choice that's right for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what about treatments? Did you go down the path of chemotherapy or radiotherapy?
Yes, I had chemo. I had two different types of chemo. One was called AC, and I had that dose dent, which meant instead of having it every 3 weeks, I had it every 2 weeks, so it's kind of hitting it harder and faster. And then I went on to Taxol, and I had 12 rounds of Taxol. So I had the chemotherapy, I also had radiotherapy, and I also had Herceptin, which I had with the Taxol for the 12 weeks, and then I had it as an infusion once every 3 weeks for a year.
Right. So how long of a period of time was it for you from the time of diagnosis, I suppose, through to surgery and then those treatments finishing?
Oh, I think it would have been about 16 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's not including the reconstruction. So I had a few months of chemo, a couple of weeks of radio, and then the Herceptin that went on for 12 months.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, having been through that, I know as well, but such a difficult time during that period for so many reasons, physically, mentally, emotionally. How did you cope during that period?
I coped well a lot of the time. I didn't cope so well a lot of the time. I made sure I checked in with the oncology psychologist, and I saw her until she threw me out. I went to support group until they threw me out. So I took everything that was offered to me in that sense. And I think the counselling and the group were both invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. I have a very close family. My husband, as I said before, was an absolute rock star. My parents were brilliant. I had close friends. I lost a couple of friends. That seems to be common as well. People can't cope and run screaming. But I focused on the people I did have, and I have to tell you, I felt very, very supported. I also felt really isolated sometimes because people don't understand, and that's where my group really came in, because I was sitting around with a bunch of girls that were feeling the same thing.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I tend to find, and it sounds like you did as well, friends either become, even more supportive, or they run the other way, and they don't run the other way for not wanting to be around you, but it's that fear of not understanding and not knowing what to say and not knowing what to do. And it's a really interesting sort of dynamic, I think, once you start to go through that and those sorts of things happen.
It is. And friends is a big one. I talk to loads of women through, the book and my Facebook and all sorts of things. And I keep getting comments about people who felt let down by a friend, someone who wasn't there, someone who they really thought that, when the chips are down, this person has got their back. and they weren't there. And it's really hard when you're feeling sick, when you're in the middle of it and you're feeling sick and you can't really do much more than make yourself a cup of tea that you then throw up anyway. You know, it's very easy to just focus on, to sort of make things bigger than they are, or to just fixate on things, or to let all your fears and insecurity bubble over. And I think a lot of these people have actually taken that disappointment and been lying in bed feeling terrible about it. And it's easy to say, I'll just let it go, but it's really hard to just let it go because you feel really like let down. For many people, this is the worst time of their life, and, you know, they've got this blow on top of it. And it is a difficult one to deal with. I've dealt with mine. You know, I was upset about it for quite a while because it was somebody who was very close to me, but they couldn't handle it, and it's a them issue, not a me issue. But sometimes it takes a while to get that distance to be able to see that.
Yeah, and nonetheless, it is hurtful and upsetting if you do go down that path of losing friends, and it's as you say, it's easy to just say, I'll just let it go, but it's much harder in practice to do that.
Exactly. But when you have a support group and other people are going through it, well, you can have a real bitch about it. Do you know what I mean? And actually that's really helpful. So, you know, I don't think people should be sort of moaning and not moaning and then getting the balance wrong and then they're just really depressed. But it's actually important to vent, you know, and this is something that is quite unique to a certain group of people. Like, your average bear's not going to get it. But if you can find people who do, then it's actually really beneficial.
Now let's get on to the book. So tell me how this came about. When did you start thinking about it, and how did it all develop?
When I thought of actually this being a book, it was a light bulb moment in the shower, because what happens when you have something like breast cancer and you sort of go down the path and you've had, you know, a few sessions of chemo, and then you know, a friend of a friend or somebody hears about somebody who's got breast cancer, and they say, would you talk to them because you're already there, and what advice can you give them? And somebody had asked this of me, and I remember I was having a shower, I was getting ready for the day, and I was just thinking, well, what would be the one thing that I would tell them? And I couldn't think of one thing, because I remembered somebody had told me this, that was helpful, and someone had told me that, which was helpful. And then I thought, maybe I'll just do a little collection of all the things that are in my head that would be helpful. And I started doing that. And the other big thing, which I think you mentioned in my fabulous intro, was the generosity of other people. I remember even the first day I sat in the ODC, which is the Oncology Day Centre, somebody sitting next to me said, oh, listen, you know, I know what you're about to go through. I've done it. Have you tried this? Or this would really help you, or this really helped me. And everybody seemed to like, everyone I came across had a tip. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could collect this tip, all these great things? Because why reinvent the wheel every time? Why have to, you know, go through something like chemo to figure out, you know, what's going to be helpful and what's not, when there's loads of people who've already done it all. And I did go to the library when I first got my diagnosis. This was another sort of reason I wrote the book, was I wanted to help myself. I wanted to get prepared. I wanted to know what to expect, what things felt like. And when I was at the library, all I could find were either medical books or one person's journey, usually a celebrity or someone who's written the book about their journey, which might or might not end well. And when you're in that vulnerable thing, you don't want to read about that, especially as you touched upon before, when everybody's journey is different. You know, things affect people different, diagnoses are different, and we know now that breast cancer is not one disease, it's a whole suite of diseases. So what I was finding wasn't relevant.
And so you thought you would do it yourself, which is, as a woman, why wouldn't we?
Exactly. Be the change in the world that you want to see. I probably just misquoted that one, but I really felt like there needed to be a book. I love books, and I love bookshops, and I love libraries, and if there's ever a problem, I want a book on it. And my book wasn't there, so it became something I had to do.
Yeah, and you know, I've got your book and I've read it front to back numerous times, and I got it, unfortunately, you know, a few years down the track for me, but, you know, when I got it and read through it, I thought to myself, oh my God, I would have loved this when I was first diagnosed. It is full of it's really practical stuff. And as you say, it's not specific. So it's open to, yeah, that's good for me, or no, that's not good for me. But it really is full of just, as you say, it's a collection of stuff from lots of people and your own experience. But, you know, for those women with early breast cancer, or if you've got, you know, friends and mums and those sorts of things, I would highly recommend it. You know, whether you buy a copy or go to the library and get a copy, it's just so much great stuff in it. Yvonne has very kindly offered to share with us a few tips from her book today. We've got 10 little ones she's going to share with us. So over to you, Yvonne. What can you share with us today?
Okay, so I'm just flicking through. This is in no particular order. But one piece of advice that I feel is really important is take help when it's offered. And for many people, even me at the beginning of my, there's the word again, journey, you're reluctant to take help. You know, you've got this, you know, you put this expectation on yourself that you can do it all by yourself, but you can't. And even if you can, it's not the best way of doing it. You've got people around you who you know will help. And if you keep saying no, then they stop asking, and then you really are stuck doing everything on your own. But if you're struggling with taking help, I used to think, well, what if it was somebody else? You know, I would be the first person to offer to help. So people will do it for you because you do it for them. So, you know, life is give and take. Take the help because it's your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Use that network that you've got. And as you say, you do it for them. So, you know, try not to be too stubborn. And when their help is offered, accept it.
I also, another one that I'm really fond of sharing is trust your doctor. And that's because, you know, we said it before, no two breast cancers are the same. So that means that no two treatment plans are the same. So you might be sitting in your chair in the chemo ward on a Wednesday, which was when I did mine, and everyone there has breast cancer, but the person in the chair next to you is having something completely different. And it's kind of natural to go, how come they're getting that and I'm not getting that? And doing sort of some comparisons, but your doctor knows what they're doing. And if you don't trust your doctor, you can get another one. Right? It might not always be the easiest thing to organise, but you need to have a relationship with your doctor where you can trust them, because they're there to make you better. So you need to feel comfortable asking questions. You need to feel comfortable raising concerns. You need to have that trust relationship, and they will look after you, but you have to let them look after you.
Absolutely. And, you know, don't use Dr. Google.
That is in the book. And you know what? I didn't follow my own advice on that one.
We never do.
We never do, but please don't do it, because my Dr. Google experience had me in a real state. Don't bottle it up is another piece of advice that I had, and I've talked to you already about how I saw a counsellor. You know, I'm a big fan of counsellors because they understand this is their job, this is what they're paid to do. So they've got the benefit of experience, whereas your best friend might not. But it's a bit like the taking help when it's offered. You know, you need to sort of take the emotional support as well, because, you know, it's a really big thing. This is probably the biggest thing you've ever been through, and it's, you know, I don't know, I'm not explaining as well, am I?
No, you are. I mean, obviously it's, you know, you mentioned the first point about using the support. This is also along those lines, but it's using professional support services available to you. So whether it is a free service or a paid service, those counselling services, they're invaluable. And as you say, sometimes talking to a professional is needed over, you know, just talking to a mate. Both serve their purpose, but, you know, obviously they are professionals for a reason. So talking to somebody about what you're going through can, you know, if it's right for you, can be so beneficial.
Absolutely. And, you know, back to the support group, if you just can't bear the thought of going to a counsellor, your support group will be run by somebody, so a breast care nurse or somebody who could sort of make sure that you know, people aren't giving out misinformation or things that aren't helpful. They're moderated very well. So that's another place where you can have an understanding audience to talk to. Audience is probably the wrong word, but, you know, it's a forum where you can express yourself and share what you're feeling with people that will get it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good suggestion.
This favourite one of mine, and it's positive thinking in moderation. Okay, so how many times? I mean, I could say put up your hands. I can't see you because it's a podcast, but I bet you if I said put up your hand, if somebody's told you to keep positive or stay positive, and everyone would have their hand in the air, because that seems to be a thing that people say all the time, and it's not necessarily helpful. You know, it can be actually quite destructive because it's putting on the extra pressure that everything bad is happening to you. You've had a life-threatening diagnosis. You've got months of treatment ahead for you. You don't feel like being positive, and people are saying be positive, so now you've got to do it all with a smile on your face. It's unacceptable. It's a personal bugbear of mine. I think it's quite cruel to put that pressure on somebody. And our breast care nurse who ran our support group, and that was one of the rules. You were not allowed to talk about being positive in group. That was actually banned, which I think is fantastic because, these, as I said before, these are the people who understand, and it's quite counterproductive to be telling people to be positive. Having said that, if you feel like you can't be positive and everything's really overwhelming, then that is a red flag to see a counsellor, because you should be having good moments in this as well. It shouldn't be all bad. You should be able to have some laughs and enjoy company and, enjoy the support that you're getting, as well as, the facing the realities of what you're going to go through.
Yeah. And I think, your point about that staying positive is, people expect us to have a smile on our face all the time when we're going through this, and it's crazy, And
inspirational. They want us to be inspirational. People want us to see us looking merry with a bald head, and they go, wow, you're such an inspiration. Where actually, we're just doing what we're told. In my opinion, the doctors and the nurses are the real inspiration, because they're the ones fixing us. We turn up to the appointments. They do their work.
Absolutely.
I find that inspiring, but people kind of, the outside people don't want to know that it's bad. They want to see you doing well. It's kind of comforting for them. Yeah. Because it's quite confronting when you see, a close friend, someone you care about, suffering.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my friend also said, if you can stay positive, then that's got some great benefits as well. Like, you will enjoy, that's the wrong word. You will endure the journey better if you're able to, be positive. But it shouldn't be that pressure that you have to be positive.
Yeah, that's the point, I think.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Am I being clear on that? Because I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. But
no, not at all.
You will, it's like anybody, whether you've got cancer or not. If you can be half full, even some of the time, then your day's going to be nicer.
Yeah, that's very true. Exactly.
I'm going to combine the next two.
Okay.
So one of the pieces of advice is make it social, and the other one is let yourself laugh. And that's a little bit about what I was just talking about, but it's not, purposefully going out and being positive. It's just saying, there is a silver lining, and the silver lining, I think, personally, and I know you do too, is that you meet some really incredible people. And I often joke, and it's actually, I didn't make this up, so don't credit this to me, but people often joke that breast cancer is the club that nobody wants to join. and I love that one, because, you don't want to join it. You'd be nuts if you wanted to join it. But once you're in it, you have a great support network. You have a great community. You have people who will want to help you. And I've been lucky not to have had anything as major as breast cancer, so I don't know if it's unique to the breast cancer world or anything, but I've met very, very few people who haven't wanted to give back. You're giving back. You're doing this podcast. People I talk to all the time, whether they do a fundraiser, whether they just make a private donation, whether they cook something for someone who's going through it, whatever it is, people feel very passionately that they want to help the next lot of people. And that's what I tried to do in the book as well, is because I was trying to capture that generosity that we've already talked about. So the silver lining is the people. So you can, make it sociable by bring a friend to chemo with you and use the time to chat. Or, go out to lunch when you're not feeling horrible. Go out to lunch with someone from your support group and just be friends. You know, I think that's really great. And actually one of the tips in my book that came from somebody else is surround yourself with happy people.
Yeah.
You know, it's really hard to be a, you know, doom and gloom when everyone around you is having a great time. And they're your friends, they're your people. So, you know, enjoy it. When you're feeling that you can do it, then go out and do it.
Yeah, I love both of those. I think that's, you know, the silver lining is the people that you meet. And, you know, it's funny, and I don't mean this to sound, you know, insensitive in any way, but I feel sometimes breast cancer does bring out the good in people. As you say, most that have gone through it are always willing to give back in some way, shape or form. They want to make the journey a little bit easier and a little bit less daunting for the next lot of people coming through. So that is, you know, for me, definitely that silver lining. And surrounding yourself with happy people and upbeat people, it's, you know, like in life, as in normal life, it's, you know, you are the sum of the people that you're around. So, yeah, that's really important.
Another piece of advice that's really helped me is get moving, and that's basically talking about exercise. It's really, you know, it's good for anybody, but when you've got breast cancer, there are studies that show that it can improve your chance of not getting a recurrence. It can improve your mood. It can improve it does improve your physical strength. There are benefits, and no downside apart from the fact that you might not feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a real favourite of mine, the whole moving, and so much research, so many benefits. Yeah, we can't speak highly enough of it.
No, I do remember, just so you know, relatable, I do remember when an exercise person came and talked to my group, I'm sitting there eating an apple Danish. Which I finished, by the way. I didn't put it down. I finished it.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good. No, waste not, want not. And I felt like saying to him, you take a round of AC and you go exercise and you tell me how it goes. Like I felt really strongly that it wasn't something that I could manage. And in those first few weeks, I couldn't really manage much more than a walk around the block. But once I was feeling like I could manage, and I was on an easier form of chemo, then it was really, really beneficial. And I'm very upfront with saying that at some point down the line, despite going to see the counsellor and everything, I did get a pretty bad bout of anxiety as a result of all of this. And I would really credit with exercise with getting me out of that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, that's incredible. It's one of those things where all the benefits, you know, for the physical recovery, but also that mental side of it, helping with things like anxiety and depression, it really, really helps. It's proven to help.
And if anyone's listening there with anxiety or depression, it's actually most of us. Okay. It's not just one or two people who get cancer and feel terrible. It happens to most of us.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are lots of resources around that, and please get help for it.
Absolutely. It's so very true.
But it is common. You're not going to be the first one or the only one who puts up their hand and says, this is happening to me. You'll be in the majority.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I've put in watch out for October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and awareness is fantastic, and it's totally what we need to move forward. It's totally what we need to get more donations for research, for practical support. But it means that there are reminders everywhere. It's in the papers, it's on TV, there's breast cancer stories everywhere. So if you are in the thick of it, it can be really, really confronting. Or if you're way down the track, it can sort of bring things back to, you know, can trigger how you felt, and it can sort of bring things up for you, is what I'm inarticulately trying to say. So the whole pinkness of it can be quite a big deal. And so just
be aware. Yeah, I mean, look, it's great for awareness, but it is, you know, it's really in your face, isn't it, for that month?
Yeah. And the last piece of advice, it's actually there's a section that's for friends, and the piece of advice is be tactful and avoid cliches. And that's basically not telling you, getting your friends to not tell you everything happens for a reason, or, you know, platitudes like that are just going to drive you nuts. But I'm bringing it up because I know you guys have had a breast cancer diagnosis, and that's just sort of I don't know, come up with your own strategy of how to shrug that off, because people will say a lot of things that aren't tactful and aren't helpful. And if you take it to heart, especially when you're, as I said, in the eye of the storm, you can take that to heart, and it can really bring you down. It can really be, make you feel bad. It can ruin your day. And so if you kind of think of a way to somehow make that okay in your head, just shrug it off or water off a duck's back, whatever it is you need to do, just be aware that people are going to say stuff to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and gosh, we could make a whole list of things not to say to somebody with breast cancer, but maybe we'll do that on another podcast.
Yeah, there you go. There's material for like a whole lot of shows.
Yeah.
But people mean well,
they do.
But they panic and they tell you a horror story when all they're trying to do is say, I relate to it in some way. And then it's too late to take it back because you've heard it and it's awkward. But people generally mean well. Nobody's going to go up to a cancer patient and tell them something that they think will upset them.
Yes, of course.
People aren't going to do that. But, it's when you're very vulnerable and very sensitive, as you and I have both been there, we can take that sort of stuff to heart.
Yeah, more sensitive than normal, that's for sure. Where normally you probably can let things roll off your back, all of a sudden everything's heightened and you are more sensitive and you are more susceptible to letting things get to you. So, yeah, it's important to find a strategy to deal with those things. And Yvonne, you mentioned like the sections of the book. What are the sections of the book? What's the book broken into?
Okay, so there's a bit of an introduction. Then the chapters are diagnosis, surgery, treatment, recovery. And then there's a section for partners, there's a section for families and carers, and there's a section for friends. And then there's a bunch of resources, including a shopping list of what to take to hospital, things like that, and a directory of services, and a very extensive thank you list because I've had so many wonderful people to thank. But I followed the pattern of what my treatment was. I know some people have chemo before surgery and do it different ways, but you can flip. And the book's written because I had really bad, the only way I can really describe it is kind of motion sickness when I was having chemo. I couldn't read because even reading a page, if it had too much going on, made me feel sick. So the book's written with one thought per page. It's in a very clear font. So if you're feeling really terrible, you can just flick through. Very easy to navigate which section you're in because it's color-coded, and you can just pick and mix what you like.
Yeah, awesome. It is super easy to digest. You can just flick through. And basically lots of little hints and tips in each of those sections. So no matter where you are, there's some advice for you, which is awesome. And Yvonne, you have very kindly offered a special for our listeners today if they do want to go and purchase the book for themselves or somebody that they know.
Yes, I'd like to offer you all 20% off.
Fab.
And all you have to do is, shall I do the plug now?
Yeah, go for it.
Just go to onepieceofadvice.com.au, and when you pick what you want, because we've got an ebook and a hard copy book, pick what you want and then go to the checkout, and when it asks for a code, if you type in TPM for the Pink Movement 20, then it will apply the discount.
Fabulous. That's awesome. And yeah, I did forget to mention at the beginning that you can get the book now as an ebook or as a hard copy as well.
Yeah, both formats.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, Yvonne, thank you so much for chatting with us today on the Pink Movement podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can probably chat with you at some other time down the track on some other topic.
Have me back. And can I just say, just a shout out to everyone who's listening, good luck and please let yourself be looked after.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Pink Movement podcast. For episode notes, links and downloads, head to thepinkmovement.com.au. Like what you're hearing? Join our Facebook page, subscribe through iTunes, and while you're there, provide a quick review. Want to help out? You can support the ongoing production of this podcast by becoming a patron. Find all the details on the website. The Pink Movement podcast, helping you to stress less, move more, and feel better.